My parents and brother pushed me into the underground safe room while crying hysterically, saying that an apocalyptic-level solar storm was imminent, and only this place could save lives. But the moment I closed the door, I overheard my brother's cold laugh through the safe room's eavesdropping system. Finally, we've locked that jinx Jiao inside. From now on, Wan will be the only precious daughter in the family, and Mom and Dad won't have to be annoyed by her anymore. The fake Aries. Lu Wanwan giggled sweetly and said, "Brother, you're so clever. Now I don't have to worry about being sent away anymore." My blood ran cold in an instant. 20 years of familiar love had turned out to be nothing but a cruel joke. At that moment, a mechanical voice echoed in my mind. Host detected is abandoned by closest kin. Apocalypse Fortress system activated. Global catastrophe countdown. 72 hours. Newbie gift. Fortress space expanded by a 100-fold. Watching the loving family on the surveillance screen, I slowly curled my lips into a smile and leaned against the cold metal wall. The safe house is indeed very safe. I just wonder when the apocalypse truly arrives, where will you hide? 1. The cage of familial bonds. The heavy lead alloy door closed behind me with a dull click, completely cutting me off from the world of my family. The grief and reluctance on the faces of my parents and my older brother Xiaoyu were still vivid in my mind. My mother had even cried herself into unconsciousness, and her words, "Yeah, you must survive no matter what," still seemed to echo in my ears. I had been deeply moved by this familiar love, believing they truly had my best interest at heart. After all, it was my father's idea to build this underground safe room, costing tens of millions, meant to protect our family from any extreme disaster. And now I'm the only one who enters. I walked up to the console and activated the pre-installed eavesdropping system. My dad had installed it specifically to ensure my safety at all times. After the crackle of static, the voices from the living room came through clearly. It was my brother Chayu's voice dripping with undisguised scorn and satisfaction. "Finally, we've locked that jinx Chow away. From now on, Wan will be the only young lady in the house. And Mom and Dad won't have to be annoyed by her anymore." A jinx, so that's how he sees me. Then came Wan Wan's sweet, delicate voice. She was brought home when she was 16. My parents said she was the daughter of an old friend, left with no one to rely on, and asked us to take good care of her. "Brother, you always know what to do. Now I don't have to worry about being sent away anymore." Wan chirped, her voice brimming with joy. My mother's affectionate voice chimed in. "Silly child, what nonsense are you talking? You're Mommy's little sweetheart. How could we ever bear to send you away? Unlike Chow, she's been cold and rigid since she was little, doing everything by the book like a robot. Just looking at her gives me a headache." My father calmly agreed. "All right, let's not talk about her anymore. Wan, from now on, this family will be yours alone. Both you and your brother will inherit the family business. As for Chow Yu's name, let's just pretend it never existed. A family of 4, harmonious and happy." So, they disliked my dull personality, unlike Wan Wan, who knew how to act cute and win favor. So, they staged this elaborate act just to permanently remove me, their biological daughter, who was an eyesore, from their lives. 20 years of upbringing, 20 years of familiar love shattered in this moment like shards of glass scattered on the ground. Each piece piercing my heart, leaving it bloody and raw. I didn't cry. I just felt cold. A chill seeping from the marrow of my bones, stiffening my limbs. At that very moment, an emotionless mechanical voice echoed in my mind. Host detected as abandoned by closest kin. Doomsday Fortress system activated. Global catastrophe countdown. 7,200. Beginner's gift pack distributed. Fortress space expanded 100-fold. I froze immediately after. I felt a slight tremor beneath my feet as the walls of the safe house silently extended outward in all directions. The originally 100 square meter safe house transformed into a massive underground space spanning over 10,000 m in just a dozen seconds. Apart from the initial control room where I stood, the surrounding areas were vast and undeveloped. The console screen in front of me also lit up, displaying a complex interface. Fortress System 10, Energy, Solar Reserves 100%, Backup Nuclear Battery 100%, Air Circulation System Normal, Water Purification System Normal, Supplies Reserve Sufficient for one person's consumption for 30 days. Upgradable Projects, Cultivation Area, Breeding Area, Workshop, Medical Room. I stared at the glaring red 72-hour countdown, then looked up at the surveillance feed. In the scene, my mother is placing an expensive diamond necklace around Luan's neck, a family heirloom my grandmother left me for my 18th birthday. My mother says, "Luan, only a beautiful girl like you deserves this necklace." Luan giggles uncontrollably and throws herself into my mother's arms, acting coy, a picture-perfect, happy family. I slowly leaned against the cold metal wall, a frosty smile curling at the corners of my lips. So the solar storm, it was real after all. They just used this truth to evil lie, hoping to leave me here alone to rot. They thought that by locking me away, they could comfortably seize everything I had and welcome their new lives without worry. Unfortunately, they miscalculated one thing in this apocalypse. I am the only player. 2. Apocalyptic Awakening. Countdown remaining. 71 hours. It took me a full hour to snap out of the immense shock and heartbreak. I stopped looking at the glaring scene in the surveillance footage and forced myself to calm down, focusing instead on studying the suddenly appearing Doomsday Fortress system. The 100-fold expansion of space from the beginner's gift pack gave me endless possibilities. The system interface clearly listed all the modules I could build and upgrade. Basic planting area. Consume 100 points to grow fast-growing vegetables. Meeting basic vitamin needs. Small workshop. Consume 200 points to produce basic tools and repair parts. Deep water purification. Consume 50 points to improve water recycling efficiency and increase reserves. Yet my initial points are 0. Ways to earn points. 1. Improve fortress construction. 2. Resist disasters. 3. Complete system tasks. Current mission preparations before the apocalypse within 72 hours. Improve your fortress as much as possible. Mission completion will affect subsequent rewards. Time is running out. The safe house was built by my father to the highest specifications and is already stocked with enough supplies for one person to survive for a month. I walked to the supply storage area, staring coldly at the neatly stacked shelves of compressed biscuits, canned food, and bottled water. These were the last traces of mercy they had left for me. The irony was that the safe house's network hadn't been completely severed. It was merely connected to an isolated local network, and the terminal for this local network was in my brother Chow's room. He probably assumed that once locked in here, I'd just wait despairingly for death. Never imagining I'd dare touch his computer, I turned on the internet function of the console and easily hacked into his computer. Chia was skilled with computers. But compared to someone like me who had won multiple international information security competition gold medals, the firewalls he set up were as fragile as paper. I saw all the files on his computer, including our family's financial reports and a medical evaluation report. The subject of the report was Lu Wan. She suffered from a rare genetic deficiency disorder and needed to take an expensive targeted medication long-term. One of the side effects of this drug was its impact on emotions, making her particularly needy for emotional attention and material satisfaction. So that's how it is. They weren't unaware of Luan's greed and scheming. They simply chose to indulge her willingly for the sake of an outsider. They chose to sacrifice their own flesh and blood. I closed the document and expressionlessly opened various shopping websites since they've shown no mercy. Don't blame me for being ruthless. I logged into all of his bank cards, stock accounts, and cryptocurrency wallets using Xiao's account. Looking at that astonishingly long string of numbers, I felt no emotion whatsoever. Half of that money rightfully belonged to me. No, I was simply taking back what was mine. Countdown. 68 hours. I began a frenzied shopping spree. Rice, flour, various meats, dehydrated vegetables, self-heating meals, drinking water. I bought out the entire stock of several large supermarkets, seeds, from staple crops to vegetables and fruits. I emptied the inventory of over a dozen flagship stores, medicines, from cold remedies to antibiotics, and even surgical kits. I cleared out all the online stock from pharmacies and surrounding cities, generators, solar panels, cables, various tools, anything that might be useful in an apocalypse. I didn't overlook a single item. My orders are flying like snowflakes to all corners of the country, with all delivery addresses pointing to the underground garage of our family villa. The safe house has a concealed logistics passage that leads directly to the garage, designed specifically for convenient material transport. Now it has become the perfect channel for my aunt moving operation on the surveillance feed. My family is celebrating Lu Wanwan's rebirth. They opened a bottle of expensive red wine and my father raised his glass for our Wan. From today onward, you are the only young lady of the Chow family. Wan was wearing my favorite dress, her face adorned with a victor's smile. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Thank you, brother. Chu affectionately tapped her nose. Silly girl, why be so polite with us? They didn't know that their bank account balances were being emptied at an astonishing rate. They had no idea that a global catastrophe was approaching step by step. 3. Frenzied purchasing. Countdown. 48 hours. The first batch of supplies arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning. Truck after truck silently drove into the underground garage of my villa complex. Through the system, I remotely activated the concealed logistics passage. One by one, massive cargo containers were transported via conveyor belts into my vast fortress base. Ding. Detected a large quantity of survival supplies stored. Fortress completion rate plus 10%. Reward 1,000 points. Without hesitation, I invested the points into construction. Upgrade to basic planting zone. 100 points consumed. Basic planting zone construction completed. A plot of land approximately 200 square meters appeared before me, illuminated by simulated sunlight lamps overhead, complete with an automatic irrigation system nearby. I scattered the various fast-growing vegetable seeds I had purchased, and the system notified me that the first harvest would be ready in 24 hours. Upgrade small workshop. 200 points consumed. Small workshop construction completed. A 3D printer. CNC machine tool. And various repair tools appear in another compartment. Upgrade deep water purification. Upgrade the air circulation system. Add an oxygen reserve module. Upgrade the power system. Connect parallel backup nuclear batteries. Points flowed out like water. And my fortress visibly improved at a rapid pace. I even extravagantly spent 500 points to exchange for a small ecological recycling system, creating an indoor garden with a stream and lawn inside the fortress. The fresh air and the murmuring sound of water slightly eased my cold and oppressive mood that had persisted for days. At this moment, my family members finally noticed something amiss. The first to discover it was my brother Xiaoyu in the surveillance footage. He sat in front of the computer, his face pale as he stared at his stock account. What's going on? The stocks I just bought yesterday have all been liquidated and my cryptocurrency. He let out a furious roar. Damn it, my wallet's been hacked. He frantically hammered at the keyboard, trying to trace where the funds had gone, but all clues vanished without a trace after entering an encrypted black hole. That was a program I personally wrote for him. There's no way he could have cracked it. Immediately after, my dad also received a call from the bank. The liquid funds in his company account had disappeared overnight. My mom wanted to buy Luan a new bag at a luxury store, but found all her credit cards were frozen. The family's faces turned from celebratory rosy hues to panic pallor. Call the police. Call them now. My father trembled with rage. Luan, frightened, hid in my mother's arms and sobbed softly. How could this happen? Did we offend someone? Chow slammed his fist on the table, gnashing his teeth. It must be the work of a business rival. Just wait till I find out who did this. They were in complete chaos, running around like headless flies. I watched all this coldly as I continued moving the newly arrived supplies into my fortress. cases of premium steak, fresh seafood, ice cream, and various flavors. I even bought myself a coffee machine and top-quality coffee beans. Outside, global communications began experiencing large-scale disruptions, and eerie yet dazzling auroras appeared in the sky. On the news, experts were still reassuring the public, claiming it was just normal solar activity. But on my system panel, that countdown had turned into a glaring red 2400. The storm is coming for the calm before the storm. Countdown 1 hour in the final 72 hours. I barely slept a wink. The construction of the fortress has begun to take shape. The planting area is lush with greenery, and the first cucumbers and tomatoes have already appeared on the vines. I exchanged some points for several chickens and rabbits, keeping them penned in the newly built breeding area to provide a stable source of protein in the future. In the workshop, I printed out some essential furniture and daily necessities, giving the empty fortress a sense of home. My stockpile of supplies is enough to sustain 100 people here for 10 years. Meanwhile, in the villa, my former home, there is now nothing but gloom and despair. The money at home vanished without a trace, and my father's company faced plummeting stocks and teetered on the brink of bankruptcy due to a broken capital chain. They hired the best cybersecurity experts. Yet, not a single clue could be found. The immense fall from grace plunged my family into utter disgrace. Stripping away all remnants of their former dignity, my mother was no longer the elegant lady she once was. She aged 10 years overnight. Her face gaunt and constantly strewn with tears. My father's temper has become increasingly irritable, often losing his temper with the servants at home. Chow, on the other hand, was like a trapped beast, locking himself in his room, trying to uncover the hacker who had stolen everything from him. Only Lin Lan was still trying her best to play her role as the family's little sweetheart. Dad, Mom, brother, don't be upset. Money can be earned again. As long as we're together as a family, that's what matters most, she said, holding a bowl of soup and comforting each of them in turn. My mother hugged her emotionally, saying, "Juan, thank goodness you're still here." My father also sighed and said, "Yes, the family may be broken, but as long as we're still here, that's what matters." Watching the surveillance footage, I felt utterly bitter. Their so-called family had excluded me from the very beginning. At this very moment, the fortress system emitted a piercing alarm. Warning. High-energy particle flux detected approaching Earth. Estimated to reach the surface in 10 minutes. Solar storm officially commencing. Disaster level. Apocalyptic. Host is advised to immediately enter maximum defense mode. I immediately shut down the logistics passage leading to the garage and reinforced the fortress's external armor to its maximum thickness. Almost simultaneously, mobile phones across all countries worldwide received the highest level disaster warning. A piercing alarm echoed throughout the entire villa. My parents, Chao Yu, and Luan Luan all turned their gaze toward the television simultaneously. On TV, the host delivered urgent news in an unprecedented tone of panic. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. An unprecedented solar storm is about to strike Earth. All electronic devices will fail and surface temperatures will rise sharply within a short period. All citizens are urged to immediately seek shelter in sturdy underground bunkers. For a moment, the living room fell into deathly silence. My dad, my mom, and my brother. The color drained from their faces in an instant. They thought of me. He remembered the underground safe room they had personally pushed her into, which was touted as being able to withstand any disaster. Chu, my mother's lips trembled, unable to form complete words. Chu's pupils suddenly constricted as if he had remembered something. He rushed frantically to the door of the safe room and began pounding on the metal door. Chu, open the door. Open it now. His voice was filled with panic and fear, devoid of the previous disdain and indifference. My dad also snapped back to reality, rushing over and shouting, "Chow, can you hear me? It's Dad. Open the door." Luan Wan was so terrified that she collapsed to the ground, crying out, "Sister, open the door quickly. Teach, there's danger outside the window." The sky had turned an eerie shade of dark red. The lights in the villa began flickering wildly, and electrical appliances emitted a zizi buzzing sound, as if they were on the verge of burning out at any moment. They desperately pounded on the door, trying every possible method. But this door, built to withstand the apocalypse, remained unmoved. Luan stared at the cold keypad lock, as if driven mad, grabbing a decorative metal ornament from nearby and smashing it violently against the password panel. That jinx, she's trying to get us all killed. I'm going to break it open, she shrieked, her face twisted with fury. I sat in the cozy control room holding a cup of hot coffee, watching her frantic movements on the surveillance screen with indifference. Detected attack on the fortress's external facilities. Activate primary defensive countermeasure. High voltage electric shock. My finger lightly tapped the yes option. 5. Electric shock counterattack. A piercing scream cut through the chaos inside the villa. In the surveillance footage, Wan appeared to be violently pushed back by an invisible force, convulsing as she collapsed to the ground, her hair standing on end in places. The metal ornament in her hand cluttered loudly as it hit the floor. The password keypad she had smashed was flickering with dangerous blue electric arcs. Chow, my dad, and my mom were all stunned. They stared blankly at Lu Wanwan lying unconscious on the ground, then looked at the door, flickering with electric sparks, their faces filled with disbelief. Wan, my mom was the first to react. Rushing over to hold Wan and crying out, "Wan, what's wrong? Don't scare me." Chu also crouched down to check and found that Wan had only been electrocuted unconscious. He sighed in relief, but then his gaze turned toward the door, filled with shock and anger. Chu, what have you done? Are you trying to kill Wan? He roared at the intercom by the door. I sat down my coffee cup, walked to the console, and pressed the talk button. My voice amplified and icy clear, carried outside. This safe house is indeed very safe. This is the first sentence I've spoken to them since being locked in here. The living room fell silent instantly. All three of them froze, seemingly not expecting me to respond at this moment, let alone in this tone. My father was the first to snap out of it, suppressing his anger. He commanded in a parental tone, "Chu, stop fooling around. Open the door. It's dangerous out there." I let out a light chuckle. The sound transmitted through the electric current, sounding eerily unsettling. Danger? Didn't you all say the solar storm was a lie? The sentence landed like a resounding slap, striking each of their faces hard. My mother's sobs abruptly halted. Chaya's face turned extremely grim, and my father's lips trembled, unable to utter a single word. Their lies were exposed right in front of me, stripping away all pretense and dignity in an instant. With a sharp click, the lights in the villa went out completely. The backup power lasted only a few seconds before burning out from overload. Darkness and silence enveloped them. Only through the crack of my safe room's door did the faint bright lights seep out as if mocking their wretchedness. Chow. My mother's voice trembled with tears thick with pleading. Yeah. Mom was wrong. Mom knows she was wrong. Please open the door and let us in. Okay. Outside. It's so dark. That's right. Yeah. My father also dropped his pride. His voice. I was wrong before and I apologize. We're family. You can't just leave us to die. Chu went even further. Chu, just open the door and we'll let bygones be bygones. I'll give you half of the family's property. I listened to their clumsy performance without a ripple in my heart. A family let bygones be bygones. Split the property with me half and half. How ridiculous. I leaned back in my chair and leisurely pulled up the fortress's external surveillance feed. The sky had turned completely dark red, like burning iron. On the streets, vehicles crashed into each other one after another, exploding into towering flames. In the distance, the glass curtain walls of skyscrapers shattered under the intense heat, raining shards of glass. The apocalypse had truly arrived. Now you realize we're family. I said, coolly, that's not what you said when you locked me up. When you gave the necklace Grandma left me to Wan Wan, you certainly didn't think this way. When you schemed to drive this jinx out of the house so she could monopolize all the family assets, you even less remembered we were family. Every word I spoke was like a knife, precisely stabbing at their most guilty conscience. They fell silent, unable to retort, because everything I said is the truth. 6. The trap of despair. After silence comes an even more frenzied outburst. Chow you unfilled daughter. I spent tens of millions to build this safe house for you, and this is how you treat your parents. My father's furious roar was distorted by anger. If you don't open this door right now, I swear I'll smash it down. Chu also began making reckless threats. Smash the door. I glanced at the control panel displaying the external armor thickness. 50 centimeters of special alloy. Forget him trying to break it with his hands. Even driving a tank here might not be enough to force it open. I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words on them and simply switch the surveillance feed. I projected the scene from inside the fortress onto the display screen outside the door. In the footage was my spacious and bright living room with soft and comfortable sofas, fresh fruits, and steaming coffee on the table. I even gave a close-up shot of the planting area. The lush green vegetables and plump fruits looked especially enticing against the backdrop of the apocalyptic scene. Then I walked to the storage area and opened a can of ice-cold cola, sigh. The sound of bubbling was clearly transmitted outside through the loudspeaker. I took a sip and let out a satisfied sigh. This series of actions was the ultimate torture for those trapped in darkness, fear, and oppressive heat. No, impossible, Chia muttered to himself, his gaze unfocused as he stared at the scene on the screen. How could it have turned out like this? He knew the safe room he designed better than anyone. There was nothing inside but cold shelves and survival supplies. The sight before him completely defied his understanding. Meanwhile, my mother fixed her eyes intently on the food displayed on the screen, swallowing hard, a fierce mix of desire and envy flashed in her eyes. Chia, give Mom some water. Mom is so thirsty. She clung to the door, begging like a beggar. The temperature outside was rapidly rising, turning the villa into a steamer. Their expensive clothes had now become burdens, soaked with sweat and clinging tightly to their bodies. My father's face turned from pale to red, his breathing growing heavy. Accustomed to a life of comfort, he had never endured such hardship before. He gazed at my leisurely figure on the screen. The rationality in his eyes gradually devoured by jealousy and fury. Chow, I'm warning you for the last time. Open the door, he roared. Otherwise, once I'm out, I swear I won't let you off. I raised an eyebrow, finding it somewhat amusing. Still dreaming of getting out. Does he really think this disaster will be over in just a few hours? On the system panel, the status bar for Solar Storm has only just begun and is expected to last at least a month. A month from now, all civilization on the surface will be destroyed. And this is only the beginning. Chia, you seem to realize something as well. Suddenly remembering the ventilation system in the safe house. Dad, Mom, stop begging her. He seemed to have grasped the last lifeline. I know where the vent is. We can get in through there. With that, he stumbled toward the backyard of the villa. My parents, as if seeing hope, immediately followed him, watching their retreating figures. I shook my head. Ventilation shaft. I've long since upgraded it with points into a fortress-grade intake with triple filtration and defense mechanisms. What you thought was an escape route was merely another trap of despair I prepared for you. 7. Internal strife erupts. The ventilation shaft is located behind the rockery in the villa's backyard. Extremely well hidden. Chu exerted tremendous effort to move the rockery aside, revealing the metal pipe opening about half a meter in diameter. He stared at the opening, his face breaking into ecstatic relief as if having narrowly escaped death. Found it. We're saved, he shouted back to my parents. My parents were also overwhelmed with joy, as if they had already seen hope of entering the safe room. Chu couldn't wait to climb in, but he soon discovered that the vent's grill was secured with special screws, and there was no way he could open it with his strength alone. Tools. Quickly find some tools, he shouted anxiously. My dad and mom immediately rushed back into the villa, rummaging through every drawer and cabinet. Soon they came running back with crowbars and hammers. Bang! 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 The sound of metal striking metal was particularly jarring in the quiet backyard. I sat in the control room, watching their futile efforts with leisurely amusement. That grating was reinforced by me using high-strength alloy manufactured in the workshop, not to mention crowbars. Even with a cutting machine, it would take several hours. After more than 10 minutes, all three of them were panting from exhaustion, but the grating remained completely unmoved. Despair once again enveloped them. How could it not open? Chow collapsed onto the floor, his eyes vacant. Just then, a faint hissing sound suddenly emerged from the ventilation duct. A stream of white gas gushed out through the gaps in the grate. What is this? My father took a cautious step back. Alert! Chu leaned in to sniff. Then his expression changed dramatically. Bad. It's anesthetic gas run. Unfortunately, it was already too late. That was the potent anesthetic I exchanged with points. Colorless, odorless, but extremely fast-acting. They barely had time to let out a startled cry before collapsing one after another. Unconscious. I watched the three unconscious figures on the monitor and expressionlessly turned off the gas release. Of course, I wouldn't let them die so easily. Living to experience despair. That's the best punishment for them. About half an hour later, they slowly regained consciousness. The temperature on the ground had risen to a terrifying level, and the lawn in the backyard had begun to turn brown and withered. The first sensation they felt upon waking was extreme thirst and hunger. Water. Water. Luan was the first to wake up, her lips cracked in her voice. My mother also struggled to get up, looking around in confusion. What's wrong with us? Chow leaned against the wall and stood up, recalling what had happened before he lost consciousness. His face was filled with fear and resentment. It was Qiaoyu. She did this, he said through gritted teeth. At that moment, the display screen on the safe house door lit up again. In the frame, I'm sitting at a dining table. On the table are 4 dishes and a soup, braised pork, steamed fish, vibrant green vegetables, and a bowl of glistening wuong rice. I pick up my chopsticks, take a piece of perfectly marbled braised pork, and place it in my mouth, chewing slowly and deliberately. The look of pure enjoyment on my face is transmitted crystal clear through the high-definition camera into each of their eyes. The sound of swallowing saliva rose and fell in the backyard. They hadn't eaten or drunk anything all day. Their bodies and minds teetering on the brink of collapse. Yet here I was feasting on a lavish dinner that would have been rare even before the apocalypse. Right in front of them. This was the cruelest torture. Chow, you beast. My father finally snapped, pointing at the screen and cursing loudly. You'll get your retribution. I set down my chopsticks, wiped my mouth with a napkin, then turned to the camera and flashed a radiant smile. Retribution. Isn't my retribution having family like you? But now it's fine. I stood up, walked closer to the camera, and enunciated each word clearly. I no longer have any family. With that, I turned off the screen directly. Darkness swallowed them once again, but this time, worse than the darkness were hunger and internal strife. It wasn't that there was no food in the villa. The kitchen fridge still had some leftovers and snacks, but in extreme conditions, this amount of food is far from enough to be divided among 4 people. The first conflict erupted over a single bottle of mineral water. 8. Food struggle. The few remaining bottles of water in the villa were tightly controlled by my father. He poured half a glass for himself and Xiaoyu, but only gave my mom and Luan a few sips. Why do they get to drink so much? Luan was the first to voice her dissatisfaction, pointing at the water bottle in my dad's hand. She shrilled. I'm thirsty, too. Under extreme physical torment, she could no longer maintain her sweet and obedient demeanor. My dad gave her a cold glance. These are extraordinary times. Men need more energy to figure things out. You women won't die from drinking less. These words made my mother's face turn ugly as well. Old Xiao, how can you say that? Juan is still young. And you what? My father interrupted her impatiently. What else can you do besides cry? If it weren't for you insisting on bringing this Luan home back then, would we have all this trouble today? He was starting to take his anger out on her. My mother froze, unable to believe these words had come from her husband's mouth. What do you mean by that? Didn't you agree back then? Didn't you also say Juan is more considerate than Xiao? I only said that because I saw you liked her. My father waved his hand impatiently. What's the use of talking about this now? Hurry up and figure out how to get some food. Luan watched them argue, her eyes darting around. Then suddenly ran to Chia's side, grabbed his arm, and began to cry. Brother, I'm so scared. Did Mom and Dad abandon me? Looking at her tear-streaked face, Chia's heart softened. After all, he handed her the remaining water from his cup. Stop crying. Drink up. Luan immediately took the cup and drained it in one gulp, then shot my mom a challenging glance. The small act completely ignited the fury in my mother's heart. She rushed over, snatched the empty cup from Wan's hand, and smashed it fiercely onto the ground. You little, I've been feeding and clothing you so well, and this is how you repay me. Flirting with my son right in front of me. The mother who had doted on Luan endlessly in the past now looked like a shrew. Her face twisted with rage. Luan also tore off her disguise and retorted sharply. I seduced your son, which I have saw that it's your own fault for not being able to keep your husband, and now you're blaming me. My mother was so angry that she raised her hand to hit her. A farce triggered by a bottle of water unfolded right before my eyes. My father stood by indifferently while Chao was caught in the middle, torn between both sides. The once loving family began their infighting on the very first day of the apocalypse. Watching this ugly scene unfold on the surveillance feed, my heart remained as calm as still water. Suddenly, I remembered Wan's room likely still held a stash of her favorite imported snacks, so I pressed the intercom button. Under Wan's bedside table, in the third drawer, there's a lot of food. My calm statement was like a drop of water falling into a pot of boiling oil. The argument in the living room came to an abrupt halt. All eyes turned sharply toward Wan. Wan's face turned deathly pale in an instant. And no, that's not true. Don't listen to her nonsense. She waved her hands frantically in denial, but no one believed her anymore. Xiao was the first to charge into her room. A few seconds later, he emerged carrying a bag filled with potato chips, chocolate, and beef jerky. His face terrifyingly dark. He had actually been fooled by Luan too. My dad and mom stared at the food, their eyes turning green with hunger. You've got some nerve. Luan, my mom shrieked as she lunged forward. We're starving, and you dared to hoard food. You ungrateful wretch. My father was also furious. The three of them tangled together in a fight over that bag of snacks. The princess they once held dear in their hands was now being beaten and kicked as if she were their enemy. Luan's cries and pleasing with my parents' curses. Composing the first mournful song of the apocalypse, I turned off the sound. No longer wanting to hear this filthy noise, I walked to the eco-garden, lay on the lawn, and gazed at the simulated blue sky and white clouds above. I knew this was only the beginning. The ugliness of human nature would become even more vividly apparent in the days to come. 9. The truth revealed. In the following days, the surface temperature continued to rise, reaching nearly 100 degrees Celsius. The villa became a massive oven, and everything outside began to melt and burn. My entire family was completely trapped inside. That bag of snacks was quickly devoured by them. Next, they started eating the spoiled food from the fridge, then all the condiments in the kitchen, and even began gnawing on the leather sofa. Hunger had turned them into true beasts. They no longer had any semblance of dignity, resorting to violence against each other just to snatch a bite of food. Wan was the first to be abandoned. She had no strength and no value to exploit. Becoming the common punching bag for all three of them, my father broke one of her legs, leaving her to crawl on the ground like a dog, begging for scraps of food. Her once proud beautiful face, due to malnutrition and constant fear, turned sallow and haggard, losing all its former radiance. My mom has gone crazy, too. She started hallucinating, clutching a pillow, and constantly calling out my Wan, alternating between crying and laughing. As for my dad and Xiaoyu, they're like two desperate trapped beasts. Every day, aside from searching for food, they try every possible method to break down the safe house door, but each time they end up failing. Every day, at a fixed time, I project scenes of life inside the fortress onto the screen outside the door. Sometimes it's me exercising on the treadmill. Sometimes it's me watching an old movie. And sometimes I simply live stream my afternoon tea for them. Freshly baked cakes, fragrant black tea. Each time it drives them into a new frenzy. This is exactly how I intend to crush their spirits and willpower. Bit by bit. Ding. Detected targets. Mental breakdown. Hatred value collection complete. Reward 5,000 points. System upgrade task initiated. Please select Fortress Evolution Direction. A. Mobile Fortress. B. War Fortress. Looking at these two options, I chose it without hesitation. In the apocalypse, holding a fixed position isn't a long-term strategy. Selection successful. Fortress upgrading. Estimated time 24 hours. The ground beneath his feet trembled slightly once more. At that very moment, in the surveillance footage, Chao, who had remained silent all this time, suddenly knelt before the safe house door. Facing the camera, he began cowing repeatedly, his forehead soon bleeding from the impact. "Chao, you little sister, I was wrong." His voice was hoarse, weak, and filled with remorse. "It was all my fault. I was blinded and deceived by Lu Wan's instigation. I was jealous that you were better than me. Jealous that Mom and Dad valued you more." As he spoke, murky tears streamed down his face. "Please, for the sake of us being siblings, give me a chance. No, give Mom and Dad a chance. They're dying." He pointed behind him. My father was lying on the ground, barely alive, while my mother, still clutching a pillow, giggled foolishly. Wan, she's not some old friend's daughter at all." Chao seemed to have made up his mind and revealed a shocking secret. She's someone I met outside. I brought her home and lied to Mom and Dad, saying she was an old friend's daughter. I just wanted to find someone to provoke you, to make you care about me more. I never thought things would turn out like this. It turns out that the root of all this was Chia's pitiful and laughable jealousy. He thought that bringing back Wan, who knew how to act cute and play dumb, would steal our parents' attention from me. Little did he expect that our parents would indeed be completely charmed by Wan, while he himself was gradually dragged into the abyss of her greed, ultimately plotting the scheme to imprison me. How absurd, how pathetic. He thought that by telling the truth, I would soften and forgive him. He looked at the camera, a hint of hope in his eyes. I watched him quietly, then played another recording. It was a recording of his conversation with his friend on the first day I was locked in the safe house. "Brother, did you really lock your sister up? That's ruthless. She's just a jinx anyway, keeping her around as an eyesore. Once the heat dies down in a few days, I'll tell Mom and Dad she's gone missing. From then on, everything in the Cha family will be mine." In the recording, Kaya's voice brimmed with smugness and cruelty, devoid of even a shred of remorse. I played this recording on loop through the speakers throughout the villa. The color drained completely from Chu's face in an instant. All his remorse turned into a pale and feeble joke in the face of irrefutable evidence. A new beginning. As the recording finished playing, the villa was plunged into deathly silence. Chao knelt on the ground like a petrified statue. Knowing that his last glimmer of hope had been shattered, his dying father upon hearing the recording struggled to sit up from the ground. With all his remaining strength, he pointed at Xiaoyu, his clouded eyes filled with rage and disappointment. "You ungrateful son." A guttural sound escaped his throat as he gasped for breath. Then his head tilted to the side, utterly still. My mother heard the commotion and turned her head blankly, looking at her fallen husband, then at her son kneeling on the ground. She seemed to understand nothing, only clutching the pillow in her arms and crying even more bitterly. In the corner, Wan, who had been lying there like a dead dog, suddenly burst into shrill, hysterical laughter upon hearing Chia's confession. "Haha, Chow, you fool. Did you really think I liked you?" Dragging her broken leg, she struggled to crawl towards Xiaoyu, her face twisted with vengeful glee. "I was after your Chow family's money from the very beginning. You're the fool who fell for it. Dancing to my tune and even personally sent your own sister to her doom. You regret it now. Too late. We're all going to die here. It's all your fault. You've doomed us all." With her last ounce of strength, she lunged at Chow like a rabid dog, biting and tearing at him. Chow didn't resist. He just knelt there numbly, letting Wan scratch and bite him. His life, his family, everything he possessed, all vanished into thin air due to his foolish jealousy and a single moment of poor judgment. I watched this final farce with cold indifference, then shut down all surveillance, fortress upgrade complete, mobile mode activated, newbie period ended, global coordinates unlocked. The cold mechanical voice of the system pulled me back to reality from my memories of the past. I walked up to the console where a massive virtual Earth appeared before me, marked with countless coordinates for migration. I pressed my palm against the cold console, feeling the faint vibration of the engine starting beneath my feet. This place, once my prison, had now become my ark to roam the apocalypse. I took one last look at the heavy lead alloy door. Outside the door lay my past, the ruins of decayed familial bonds and human nature beyond it awaited my solitary future. Boundless possibilities and a brand new life. I set coordinates far from the city and pressed the ignition button. The fortress began to move slowly deep underground, heading toward an unknown distance. I didn't look back again. Those people, those events would all be buried forever in the past along with the destruction of this city. I leaned against the porthole, watching the dark rock layers rush past outside the window. I knew the world outside had already become unrecognizable, and the path ahead might be fraught with thorns and dangers. But in my heart there was an unprecedented calm and freedom. The solar storm destroyed the old world and gave me a new life. From today onward, I am only Xiaoyu. Chow who lives for herself.